Are you enjoying the ABC meltdown and collapse as much as the surrender in this case as much as I am? I'll start with you, Emily.
Well, I'm also enjoying really ABC's peers in media freaking out because of the ABC settlement. I mean, that's been, I think, equally as delicious as watching so many people now criticize ABC for quote unquote caving. And, you know, what was a pretty serious case? I mean, it's just in the last 24 hours that so many different people in media are now accusing ABC basically of enabling Trump when they were staring down the barrel of a very, very problematic deposition, being in litigation with an incoming president, and all of that would entail for the incoming administration, their coverage of the incoming administration. I mean, like you said, I'm not cheering on like lowering the threshold for defamation for journalists. And I don't necessarily think this lowers the threshold. I think it really was a very, very serious case. So all kinds of schadenfreude to be enjoyed this morning.
You know, the thing that got them in trouble, Eliana, was he went out there, repeatedly said that a jury had found him liable for rape, which is not what happened. A jury found Trump liable for sexual abuse. And they said no on the rape charge. Then the judge wrote up his interpretation of what happened. Obviously, this judge was not a Trump fan. And the judge, Lewis Kaplan, wrote as follows after the fact when Trump was seeking a new trial. The judge wrote, "The finding that Ms. Carroll failed to prove that she was raped within the meaning of New York penal law does not mean that she failed to prove that Mr. Trump raped her, as many people commonly understand the word rape." Okay, nobody even understands what that means other than this judge wanted someone to see the word rape and Trump's name in a headline. But the fact remains, the jury's verdict is the jury's verdict, and no judge can change it with words after the fact or their post-verdict interpretation. The judge can throw it out. The judge can lower the charge potentially by throwing a charge out, but he can't increase the charge from sexual abuse to rape. It's not a possibility, neither this judge nor any other. And the bottom line is Trump was not found liable for rape by this jury. And despite that fact, George Stephanopoulos went out on the air in that interview and sounded like this. Sought to.
And you've endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and two separate juries have found him liable for rape. Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape. Someone who's been found liable for rape, you have to answer the question. Why are you supporting someone who's been found liable for rape? They are afraid to come forward, as you said, because they are defamed by those who commit the rape. You don't find it offensive that Donald Trump has been found liable for rape. Well, actually, what you're doing is defending a man who's been found liable for rape. I don't understand how you can do that. The judge affirmed that it was, in fact, rape. Donald Trump was found to have committed rape. That's just a fact.
And that's why he's now having to pay $15 million, or his news organization is, Eliana. So what do you make of it?
This is astonishing for a number of reasons, a couple of which we haven't touched on yet. But I really can't recall a case in which a major national news organization had to pay a sum like this to a celebrity or politician in the U.S. And that's particularly because the protections for news organizations are so high. So you can't be sued just for saying something untrue, can't be sued for libel or defamation for saying something untrue. Trump would have had to show that George Stephanopoulos did so with actual malice. That's the standard, and it's a very high standard. But this case never went that far, and I think that's the question: is ABC actually might have had a strong case? Because it is so hard to win these lawsuits. And the question is, why did they settle? Why did they settle, and why did they settle now? Was it that they didn't want to be involved in litigation with the sitting president of the United States? Or was it that they knew very embarrassing and unflattering things would come out in the discovery process, or that Stephanopoulos would be forced to make embarrassing admissions in a deposition. We don't know, but to me, there are some serious unanswered questions about why the settlement was made and around the timing of it that lead to speculation around those things. I have to assume that it was one of those things, and that paying $15 million now was less painful for them than going through a potentially humiliating or embarrassing discovery process.
But you know what they also skipped was the motion for summary judgment phase, because that's filed after you get depositions from each side. What normally would happen is they take Stephanopoulos' deposition, they take Trump's deposition and whoever else's that they wanted, and then you get all your deposition transcripts ready and you file, as the defendant, a motion for summary judgment, meaning give me a win here, Judge, and dismiss this defamation claim against ABC without a trial. Because here, you can see right here that everyone admits the judge said this. But the problem is that they didn't do that. So they wanted to get out of this before they even had that serious shot at getting it dismissed altogether by the judge. Which tells me they didn't want him sitting for deposition. That's why they paid the $15 million. That plus they were probably, yes, a bit on bended knee because they're afraid of Trump. Not so much in his capacity as a plaintiff, but in his capacity as the president-elect. And they need him. ABC News needs to have a relationship with him. And this is no way to do it. To continue to lie about him, to maintain that your lies were justified. You were allowed to tell them, notwithstanding the fact that it is indisputable he was not found liable by a jury for rape, as Stephanopoulos said over and over, Emily.
He said, you rolled the clip of him saying, that's just a fact. And it's sort of the problem with people like George Stephanopoulos and crystallized in one perfect example. That's just a fact about something that's absolutely not a fact. In fact, it was found the opposite. Like literally the jury answered no. And it's also interesting. I mean, we haven't even touched on the rank misogyny in that interview, which is just maddening to watch. He's telling Nancy Mace exactly how she should feel about this as a woman, as somebody who's survived sexual abuse. But Trump was, I believe, in this judgment, found liable of something much lower than rape, which was sexual abuse, which George Stephanopoulos could have used that. There's something very particular about wanting to accuse Trump of being held liable of rape that they knew better. I mean, they wanted to use this Aaron Blake Washington Post story they put up on the screen. If people were watching this and saw the ABC clip, they used this Aaron Blake Washington Post story about what Judge Kaplan, who was trying to like hedge and show there was wiggle room on, how people understand rape being different than the legal standard of rape. It's just ridiculous for a judge to be involved in. But they wanted that Washington Post story to give them license to say that it's just a fact when the jury said something completely different. And it didn't, it does not hold any weight or credibility. It's just a ridiculous claim. So it didn't work out for them,
Emily,
clearly.
If George Stephanopoulos had said, the judge found that the finding Miss Carroll failed to prove that she was raped within the meaning of the New York penal law does not mean she failed to prove that Mr. Trump raped her. If they want to say that, which I grant you is far less catchy, they would have been fine. Yeah. I mean, that's the problem. They were trying to take this judge, trying to throw E.G. and Carroll a bone, but the judge knew that the judge could not declare Trump a rapist. So it's just kind of like, well, the finding that she didn't prove she was raped doesn't mean she failed to prove he raped her, as many people commonly understand the word rape. Like, all of this is so fucked up that the judge was doing this at all. Like, what are you talking about? The common understanding of the word rape. There is a statutory definition of the word rape. It was provided to the jury and they checked no when they were asked to decide whether Trump had done that. They check, like, this is an egregious statement by the judge anyway. But let me tell you, as somebody who does this all the time, talks about legal rulings and things that are dicey about people, we bend over backwards to make sure we track the exact language, because if you don't, that's how you get in trouble. We're not perfect either, But if we screw it up, we'll come back on and correct it. We'll come back the next day and say, okay, here's what we meant to say. They never did that. I don't know whether Stephanopoulos had 10 producers in his ear saying over and over, not rape, not rape. I think they didn't say that. I think they did not do him a solid because they popped up that article that you just pointed out from the Washington Post as like his proof. You see? And so this segment was long. It was like 15 minutes long. That thing pops up and he's like, there, I have it right there because the Washington Post wrote this. And I guarantee you that's his team trying to help him out. Like, yeah, it's rape. It's rape. And what you really needed was a damn lawyer to say, or someone who knows how to read a legal opinion to say, that doesn't excuse his statements over and over that a jury found him liable for rape. It's not true. But the thing is, Eliana, I guarantee you the whole crew was so gleeful about attaching this word to the vile Trump, they couldn't help themselves.
I'm actually not sure if in their own mind they even distinguish between sexual assault and rape, and that they themselves may be so convinced that Trump is guilty that they elided the two things. We just don't know what happened behind the scenes, but it's perfectly plausible to me that they their visceral dislike of Trump goes so far that that they weren't all that familiar with the distinctions that the jury made, frankly.
You have to prove when you're suing, when you are a public figure, claiming that you have been defamed, as Trump was claiming. And by the way, to the point you raised initially, when that happens, as a public figure, people have the highest ability to say bad things about you. The First Amendment protects speech, and it really protects speech about public figures. And it really protects speech about political public figures or political acts taken by public figures. It's a political person in the public sphere that has the most protection you can get under the law. So that's why the media generally gets away with saying false things about politicians as long as it doesn't reach this extremely high standard. And that high standard is it has to be malice. And what is said with malice? And what does that mean? It means with knowledge that it's false, like I'm knowingly lying about you. I know you weren't found liable for rape, and I'm saying it anyway. Or the more frequent standard is the reckless disregard for its falsity. So you don't care. So this is a scenario where this is what got Fox in trouble with Dominion, where Dominion's sending in letter after letter saying, this isn't true. There's no evidence for it being true. Here's this that proves it's not true and that proves it's not true. And all you have on the other side and saying it's true is like the unsupported declarations of Sidney Powell. That's how you get to reckless disregard of whether, in fact, it's true. So it has to be like really, it can't just be like, I didn't do my homework. That's negligent. That's not reckless. Okay. So the standard is very high. And this is why I think that there were texts and there would be instant messaging between George and the team. All of that. That's all what the anchors use. And I used it many times too at Fox and at NBC, where you're corresponding with Stephanopoulos guaranteed was corresponding with his producers during that whole segment. And I guarantee you that those communications don't reflect well on anybody and anyone involved. And it could possibly be the team maybe saying it's sexual abuse. Right. It's sexual abuse. And George refusing to acknowledge that. And then perhaps the team finally just realized they weren't going to bend him and threw up that Washington Post article. But whatever it is, it didn't look good for him, Eliana. I think we can agree on that.
Right. It's a really bad look. And I would add to this, it sets a scary precedent for two other libel suits that are underway, one against CNN and one against NBC, that are far stronger cases and have progressed much further than ABC News let this one progress. The one against CNN is about an incident that occurred on Jake Tapper's show, where a former military veteran who was, or a military veteran who was working to extract Afghans out of Afghanistan during the collapse of the government there. CNN insinuated that he was engaged in fraud. And at MSNBC, where they called a doctor working in immigrant detention facilities a uterus collector, arguing that he was performing hysterectomies unnecessarily. And those suits, Jake Tapper's deposition was taken, and dirt came out in that. So this has to be sending a chill, not just through ABC, but like CNN and MSNBC cannot be feeling good today.
For those of us who have been holding our breath for the past several months, we can finally exhale in the wake of this presidential election, right? Work can finally be done on the major issues that this country's facing, and one of the most significant is our national debt. Look, the fact is our nation's broke, and that debt is a house of cards that cannot be quickly dismantled by anyone. So the strategy remains the same when it comes to your investments. You might want to diversify your savings. Virtually all the experts say that's a good idea. This is why I want to tell you about Birch Gold. So many things are out of our control and out of our president's control that it really can be important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group can help you if you would like to convert all or part of an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold, which is like a hedging of the bets. And the best news is it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. You just text MK to 989898 and you get your free info kit. And plus right now you will receive a free 1 ounce silver eagle for every $5,000 purchased Silver Eagle coin. Protect your savings with Birch Gold. Text MK to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.